Darkness covered the funeral as those black clouds rained onto black umbrellas. Most of the policemen were gathered to put Sergeant Ventura into the ground. Detective Winters turned from the man's family, police, and, with a scowling cigarette, he headed back towards his car. "Did it go well?" I asked him from where I had waited in the back seat. I told him exactly what happened," he asked me after a moment of silent conversation. The rain was making a soothing noise on the roof and windshield, repetitive, insistent, and natural. I listened to that instead of the rest of his monologue about filling out a report and then talking about the report to his superiors, and now telling me the whole story. I looked out the window as he went on, and watched the various policemen and their wives filing away. I noticed only half of them had wives, and only one had a male partner. I wasn't sure if he was to be referred to as a wife. Can't be a spouse in this state. And for all that they just made me write that I had accidentally shot the corpse-shaped booby trap that killed Sergeant Ventura. "You finished?" I asked while he stopped to catch his breath. "Yes, thank you. I feel better," he claimed. He started his car, and we drove back to the hotel. "You just gonna stay here with me?" I asked him as I headed past the beds for the bathroom. I intended to have a shower, thinking, I admit I don't get them very often, living outdoors. "I wouldn't dream of leaving you. You are the love of my life. I can't sleep when you aren't in that bed over there in the same room as me. Meals just don't taste as good without you." Detective Winters had an odd tone of voice as he said all that. I decided to just leave it alone. While I was showering, I realized I was afraid of him. I was harmless compared to him, and I could kill someone to protect something I couldn't even explain. What would he do if I tried to escape? I decided it was best to accept this path. I wanted to make recompense for taking a life. It meant something to me, even if I avoided earthly justice. I trimmed my beard and tied my hair back with my bandana. I looked like a human being. I finally put on the clothes Detective Winters had bought for me at the thrift store. I looked like a decent person. Corey tilted his head at me.
"Looks like you could find a mate."
Corey complimented me. "Think so?" I asked, blushing.
"Amen."
Corey squawked supreme affirmation. I presented myself to Detective Winters. "Thank you," he muttered, with a cigarette towering ash atop a filter on his mouth, as he lay on his back with a towel over his eyes. He was thanking me for cleaning up. I too got some rest. It seemed like all we did was sit at the police station and fill out paperwork. I had started pacing and found I was not allowed out of his sight. Being confined was strangely exhausting. I laid there and started to fall asleep. It was strange sleeping indoors again. It had taken me so many nights in that bed to get used to it, My dreams were of distant times and places. Sometimes I saw Curl and primitive humans in my dreams. Those were strange nights. The hotel window was open, and the sounds of people softly shuffling by, or arguing in the distance, or watching an infomercial all night on full volume drifted in with the cool breeze. The world was outside, and I had learned to sleep in a new place. A strange kind of sleep. The phone rang, and I awoke and sat up. Corey was watching me in the darkness. He asked,
What is that?
"It's Detective Winters' phone," I told him. After it stopped ringing, he woke up and got it, and called back. He was lying there, half asleep. "You called?" He sounded quiet and spoke slowly. "I was asleep. I saw that you just called. I want to talk to you. Are you okay? I miss you. Hello?" Someone might be talking to him. He was listening, there in the darkness. Then he looked at the phone, acknowledging that the call was ended. He gently set the phone down and rolled back over. I could only presume he was trying to fall back asleep. Then the phone rang again, and he answered it. It asked in a voice I only heard him use there at night. "Please tell me what it is. I want to hear it." And there was a pause as he waited for a response. But it was his boss instead, and after chuckling, he told Detective Winters that he was needed at the scene of a murder. I could hear it. "Let's go." He looked over and saw I was awake. We dressed and went to the car. The cool night air greeted us, and Corey outstretched his wings, loving the breeze. We got out of the car at those last moments of night, at a hiking trail that led up Grandfather Hill. After crossing Sunbury Creek, I've tasted the legendary sunberries. They aren't meant for human consumption. I wouldn't recommend them. Forensics had a van near the head of the trail. The body was about to get removed. They had waited for Detective Winters. "There is the trail they made to get to her." Detective Winters had his last cigarette and lit it with his Little Red Riding Hood and wolf eyes lighter. He took a death-sucking drag from it and pointed with it while he exhaled unhealthy air. "I want us to go the long way. I want to know the rest of her story." I stood quietly and shivered. Corey clicked that there was a path if I turned around. It was a click that meant it was only the first step. There were 3 or 4 to find the path. He'd not tell me there were a series of steps, because crows don't think of numbers in the same pattern as humans. Numbers are magical in their symbolism to crows. Crows can count to a degree, but they will often stop counting if the number matches the same meaning they identify with the bushels they are counting. Thus, the number 3 to a crow is also essentially female as a symbol. Therefore, when counting a group of females, there would necessarily be 3. Every number had such a meaning. I found a stone, and when I stepped upon it, I knew the path across the roots. It appeared when we got to the top of the hill. It led down to where the creek was. I stopped to get Detective Winters and heard him behind me. "I am following." His voice sounded like he had his eyes on me and couldn't really see the path. Corey kept urging my steps and then told me,
This is where it first found her.
Corey hopped down and pointed with his beak.
I think it is like a man. See its funny footsteps?
"What happened?" I asked.
How should I know, my lord? You always task me so.
Corey flitted up to my shoulder and trembled and whispered into my ear.
It killed her, I am guessing. What do you think?
I listened then. I had heard the forest once before. I knew this place. It could whisper in that same tone. For just a moment, it was almost a glimmer of a feeling. A childish emotion. A very crude and simple feeling. Like just one note of a song. I glanced up and smiled. "Corey," I said softly, smiling. He drilled a long series of clicks. That was his most hilarious laugh.
My lord?
Corey wanted to hear what I was thinking. "It is like Beauty and the Beast. This footprint, that is like a man. It is a man that is like a beast. He wanted her, loved her, followed her.
Killed her,"
Corey added. "That wasn't the plan. See how carefully it hid?" I pointed where the shafts of sunlight lit each footprint perfectly. Such a thing could not step out of the bounds that were set for it by nature. Each of its movements in the forest was perfectly synchronized, until something on its trail changed. Its movement pattern changed. It was following her, although still very careful as it went.
What godless beast saw this woman and looked so intently?
Corey sounded interested. I could not guess while I studied its saddest footsteps. "This is where it retreated." I pointed to the path of its egress from the kill site. The sunlight danced through the trees as though the light were floating through the forest. In those strange shadows, I could imagine the rest. Hunched and breathing in the moonlight, it had watched her approach. She had seen its eyes, and perhaps she had screamed, fled, panicked. On instinct, the beast had forgotten its fascination and attacked. Her fragile body stood no chance, and it left her there and fled this direction. I was walking its path. "I'm going to get dogs out here. Wait," Detective Winters called after me. He sensed the terrible danger and wasn't driven to it as I was.
Must go, now.
Corey was insisting. My crow was also afraid. "I want to see for myself." I also insisted. I was afraid too, but the quality of my fear was merely a sail to the fears lurking upon my path. I could not turn back and face those darker gazes. They could see into my soul and ignore me, consigning me to the void. The full moon still stood overhead and shone down in the lightning sky. In the eerie green light of the forest, I found a clearing. I had followed the trail, losing the policeman and the detective. They would eventually find me. The clearing was ringed by mustard-colored toadstools all around its edge. A man lay in the bloody pelt of a wolf as it peeled from his body. His claws held the earth and were caked in gore. Now I only felt the terror of my action. I had ignored my fear for fear of being ignored by my own lucky stars. Now I was terrified of the thing before me, the deadly and unnatural visage of it. The beast was breathing a painful mist onto my hand. He was a little more man than creature. As his stillness grew, from moment to moment, he looked up at me.
No, we see you.
Corey spoke in his most sincere and clearest English.
Why have you come to see this?
The man wolf asked in a voice broken by remorse, tired by rage, shamed by murder, and driven to isolation. Besides the inhuman growl that his voice was composed of, its yellow eyes stared, bleeding tears across a face not yet human and no longer an animal. Did you love her? I asked. Before she saw you, nothing happened to her.
Melody, oh God, no. She followed me.
He exclaimed. When he said me, he began to howl dismally. This broke into an unearthly and almost inhuman cry of agony, straight from his soul. Hearing it and knowing the fruit of his lamentation is what turned a streak of my beard and hair white, and the white feather on Corey drained of color at that same time. We stood in the morning light and waited. The cursed creature in front of us sobbed miserably. He said,
I should be dead, not her.
Death will always happen.
Corey told him.
Not for me.
He wept bitterly. He understood you, I noticed.
Indeed, I think it shows he is not so bad. You listen well enough to understand an animal.
Corey spoke to me, and then to him. He just stared at my crow. Then he confessed.
It is the beast that is evil.
She loved you too, I was sure. 'Twas the beast that killed her for that love.
She did love me.
He told the truth, and the hot tears washed some of the blood off of his face. Dogs and policemen arrived. The moon was gone, and the sunlight was warming the forest. They trampled the toadstools and put the decomposing wolf's skin into evidence bags. They put the cursed one in handcuffs. An irony.
I hate zingers. I was told growing up that they were for the weak-minded. Like a Jedi mind trick, you know?
Detective Winters was doing something on his phone in our hotel room. His voice startled me as I lay half asleep on my own bed. He was sitting on his bed, half undressed, smoking under the fire alarm. I had no idea what he was talking about. "Will you open a window? Corey has very small lungs," I requested.
Cough!
Corey said in perfect English. Then my talking crow imitated the hacking and coughing of Detective Winters in the middle of the night. It went on for about as long as a mummer's dance, and then ended with the sound of a man spitting. Jesus, would have sworn for a bird like that. Detective Winters applauded the performance, and then used the lit cigarette in his mouth to light another. And then he put the smoldering one in his mouth, and used the lit one again to finish lighting the fresh tobacco. Then he accidentally scattered the rest of the brown stringy stuff all over the floor. He swept the remains of his new rolling kit off with the spill, and shrugged, laid back, and puffed away.
Goodness!
Corey flitted down and inspected the stuff. He liked it too much, and I told him to stay out of it. A knock came upon the door. I already had a bad feeling. I'd read my horoscope, and Detective Winters's too. We both had it coming our way. Nothing good could come from non-dairy starlight and niche holes on the border. Those phrases made no sense, and yet our stars translated to those words as they danced drunkenly across the keyboard of the starry skies. You get that? I stiffened.
Ugh, I always get it.
Detective Winters smiled at me weirdly, for being weird. He wasn't feeling the terror I felt. For a man who hated zingers, he sure took fear literally.
One knock, my lord. Very bad.
Corey told me. I nodded. I already knew something was terribly amiss. Just because the armed and half-naked policeman in my bedroom was blundering forward to grip the door handle without regard didn't mean that we were safe. Only terror gripped my heart as my crow went to the bedpost and squawked in alarm.
Must go, now.
He opened the door, and it was the same maid from before. She was wearing her regular street clothes instead of her uniform. She reminded Detective Winters that he was a policeman. He agreed, and she asked him if, as a policeman, he could help her. He agreed to that, too. I didn't want to go, but I had no choice. Gagging and swaying stiffly like a terrified zombie, I went with them, knowing this was going to be very bad. Because I had read those weird horoscopes and believed them. Sweat shot out from my upper lip as I gibbered helplessly in dread. "Where are we going?" I asked in apprehensive discernment, finally getting the words out of my sweaty lips.
We are going to Sesame Street and Brooklyn Ave. You ever gone there before?
He accepted one of the woman's menthol cigarettes and fumbled with the book of matches from the hotel that was in the ashtray of his car. Then he put the cigarette to his lips and lit it while driving. He eventually cracked the window and let out most of the smoke.
Why don't you open your window?
The woman asked. I was very afraid of the kind of trouble she was asking for. If I opened the window, I might lose Corey in an awful way. Trembling, I reached out and took the window's lever and opened the window a crack. Then I reached over and got the other one too. She smiled like a golden devil and cracked her window and then got hers down to about halfway. By then, only the odor of the smoke remained. That's probably good, I gulped. We got to her apartment and went inside to meet her husband and her son. The boy was tied to his bed, and his eyes were terrifying and horrible. His face was monstrous and contorted and looked like a bad makeup special effect. Except that was his actual flesh. He struggled mightily, and for a moment it was as though he would break free and rampage like an angry animal. His teeth glowed in the shade, sharp and ready to bite. He looked at us. As his eyes met Detective Winters's, the man froze. Then some of his hair started to wither and wilt. It became brittle and gray. He staggered backward and fell. I tried to avoid the gaze of whatever that was. It only wore her son, but something else was with us, watching us from within him. As Detective Winters made the communion of eye contact, it had known him and known itself to him, thus kin to its ways. He had fallen to the shock and horror of something unfathomably horrifying beyond words. The meaning of such a thing is simply instinctive, and to not know it is a blessing, and it cannot be known to someone until they have seen it, smell the fruit candy sweetness and the sulfur of its breath, heard the voice of an angel, but not one from heaven.
Open the window,
It commanded. The voice of this creature was not made by a human will, yet it was from the lips of a child, horrible and deep and grinding like 1,000 souls on the wheels of torture, all crying out this one phrase in unison, and then as one voice together, and tormented and irresistible. I quaked and fell back against the wall, refusing to look at it. I crept along the wall until I got to the shades. Then I drew them and let in the light. I gasped at the surreal horror I could see then. The whole city was covered in flesh. Parts of people twitched and dripped and dangled everywhere. Skinless ones dragged their feet, leaving trails of themselves as they went. I heard a rumbling, or rather saw it, sensed it somehow. The clouds convulsed and began to drip, and it was then raining. The rain was blood. I screamed and fell back. Corey flapped around the room, and the demonic thing with us was laughing. I clawed my way to the door, frantically. Detective Winters got up suddenly, and with a wild look in his eyes. His head was struck upon the shelf, and a clacking monkey doll with chimes fell free onto my back as I crawled out of the bedroom door. The vision of ultimate horror burned the landscape into my memory. Once it is seen, it cannot be unseen. As I looked around, I could still feel its presence on everything. I clawed at the floor, slick with the butcher's offal, but it was just the carpet. The fear was real, and as I held myself and cried in terror, I knew the carnage was still all around me, invisible. There were bodies hung from ropes and chopped apart and torn, and there were dead staked to the ceiling and vivisectioned. Only I knew they were there, even if I couldn't see them. I had seen them and knew they still remained. My heartbeat slowed, and I felt the clacking of the monkey on my back. I shook myself free of it and went and hid in a corner.
My son, he's feeling better. You two have cured him. How do you do this? No exorcism? Nothing?
The father was in tears and holding up his son for us.
Let's get out of here.
Detective Winters helped me up. Corey rode on my outstretched left arm, nervously. I kept lowering my arm, to which he would click his disapproval each time. Detective Winters helped my shocked frame into the car and tossed the toy monkey onto the seat next to me. It had most likely followed us out of the apartment, or else he had carried it. Certainty is for the weak-minded, I concluded, as I stared at its malevolent glass eyes. We got back to the hotel room, and one of us put the monkey on top of the television.
Time to get some sleep,
Detective Winters stated. He laid down stiffly, like some kind of rigid corpse.
Must go now.
Corey hid behind my head on the pillow and softly called. I watched helplessly as the horrible thing sat there atop the television. I could only speculate that it was the cause of the child's malady, and that removing it had made everything better. I stared at the infinite evil in its dark glass eyes. Suddenly, it started to chime its little chimes, clashing them loudly in the darkness. "Oh God, it's awake!" I yelled and sat up. Corey fluttered around on the bed, flapping frantically.
What's happening?
Detective Winters woke to a start. We laid back down, and I started to fall asleep. As my eyes slowly started to close, the absolute terror I had felt since the beginning was starting to subside. Just enough
to catch my breath. Maybe I would not get left forgotten in the starry skies. Perhaps the wall of sleep had an unlocked door for me to get through safely to the other side. My eyes were fluttering shut when suddenly the monkey chimed again, evil and terrifyingly in the dark. "That thing!" I shrieked in gross terror as I woke suddenly. In the darkness, its shape sat there, ready to pounce on the sleeper. It was watching our eyes close with its own eyes always wide open and staring, shining in the darkness. The toothy grin of the diabolical creature anticipated this third calamity upon our dying nerves. My sleep brought the image of the mirrored eyes. I stared into the mirror, seeing its marble glass amid the tough, spiky hair. The monkey in the mirror wanted out. As I dreamed in a delirious fog, my dreams told me of its true nature in the world, the one we shared alongside it. The doll was merely where its existence met ours, like a kind of intact vortex. The space between the walls of the whirlpool as it drains into the darkness, gurgling. I was staring too deeply into that darkness, and there it was. I could see its true form there. It clambered up out of the darkness, held back only by the glass of the mirror. Enraged, the monkey glared and snarled at me. It showed its sharp teeth and then began hitting the glass. It threw itself against the glass over and over. As the glass fractured and broke, it began the crawl through, shrieking and snarling in terrifying rage. Its flesh was cut to the bone, and it peeled off its own face, coming through the broken glass like that. Then it came crawling across the floor to get to me, its hate-filled eyes glimmering over its vicious teeth. Sleep was not a safe place to be. The chime blasted again, clanging loudly and diabolically. I jerked to my feet with a start, the image of the nightmare still clinging to what I thought I was seeing. Except, as I blinked away the nightmare, I could see the dark liquid of its true form writhing back into the shape of the doll. Its shadows scattered across the wall like animated flames with no color. The foul smell of sweet and rotting things filled the air. I could hear its growl from the doll, and from all around, and from within. I awoke in the darkest hour of the night, sweating and cold. I felt as though something had just left us there, or perhaps still remained. A cold fear crept along my clammy skin. I looked over to where my talking crow was asleep, nested on the pillows. Detective Winters was snoring in his own bed. The open window was watching me until I looked up. Then the feeling was gone. I laid back down, When I slept again, I dreamed of the woman I had left behind in my home. It seemed so long ago. I wondered if she was still there. Somehow I knew she was. I suddenly couldn't stop thinking about her. I really didn't like her, yet my instincts told me to worry about her. So I did. As dawn crept light across the twisted landscape outside the hotel window, I thought of her. Then I got up and ate my sandwich out of the fridge and drank some water out of the sink. I left a piece of it for Corey and went to brush my teeth. Detective Winters woke up as his phone was ringing. He listened and said very little. I could tell he was talking to his boss. "Ready to go?" he asked me as he laid back down. "I am. Are you?" I nodded at his prostration. "Let's stay and eat," Corey suggested as he fed. We all shuffled out of the hotel room to the car, Corey flitting from place to place and finally gliding to the car boldly. 3 crows took the opportunity to scold him from the wire above. He avoided them and looked at me. He said,
"You should know your old home, or sadness will prevail."
Corey told me. "I know." I took him with me into the car, hugging him gently to me. "What is it?" Detective Winters asked me with consideration, looking in his rearview mirror at me. "There is a woman I left behind in my home. I have started worrying about her." I told him the truth. "I thought you were homeless." He handed me his phone. "Are you?" I asked him. Sometimes I adopted Corey's mannerisms when dealing with people. Not intentionally. "Touché, Mr. Lord, touché." Detective Winters went ahead and lit a jacked-up-looking rollie, all bent and with bits of tobacco sticking out of it. He opened the car door crack while we sat there. I dialed the number. "Isidore?" I said her name when she picked up.
"Christ Lord, I thought you were gone forever,"
she exclaimed. She started saying a bunch of stuff about the house and bills before I said, "I don't care about the house. I called for you," I said.
"I need you to come back. I can't do this on my own. I know you won't leave me. Why are you gone?"
Isidore started crying into the phone. "Isidore, how can you say that? We barely know each other. I invited you in. I didn't think you would stay. That's why I left, because you wouldn't." I explained honestly. I had only just spent a few nights with her, and we barely had more than a conversation before that. Then she had just decided she was in love with me and moved in. Not that she had anything to move. She had arrived with her toothbrush and pajamas. I thought it was cute until she stayed.
"I know you.
Isidore sounded strange. Yeah, I know you too. It's not like that. What do you want from me? I must have sounded different to her than I meant to. For she simply said,
Just your love.
I can't just love you, I claimed. I was lying. I fell in love with people all the time. I did actually care for her. I was just being very cowardly about it at the time.
Then accept my love for you.
She negotiated. Fine. Is that all? Are you okay? I asked.
I am not okay. I literally need you.
Her voice was very quiet when she said this. I believed her, even though I did not want to. I have to go. I have work to do. I will call you. I paused as Detective Winters made a gesture of walking fingers and a knock on the door. I hate charades. I will come see you later. Then I hung up as she said goodbye and told me she loved me. Let's go. She's fine. I shrugged and restored his phone to his hand. Her name's Isidore? Detective Winters chuckled. That's like calling a girl Charlie. It's kind of cute, I guess. She doesn't need a cute name, I promised him. He ignited the engine and drove us to the scene of murder. Beholding the darkness within the earth filled me with fear and dread. Detective Winters told me over and over that I was going with him into the darkness. I refused to go down there, panic sweeping me in strokes instead. I was suffocating on my own doubt of survival, anticipating such an adventure. Corey was left behind as he dragged me by handcuff to his wrist into the dizzy and pale threshold. Then, by mere candlelight, we went amid the crackling specters of the dim. I closed my eyes to see, knowing it is the way in such a place. I remembered the mirrored veins of the paths above this place. All of them followed the water, and it rode the top of the stones. Therefore, I knew my way, as surely as I knew the paths that had formed directly above. In the young forests, amid the ruined heath. Without the sky, without my bird, without my sight, I was paralyzed by fear of the dark dwellers. There was only one way out, and that was forward. In my paralysis, I had no control over myself, except to know I was fleeing in panic, unable to stop. I looked down to find the handcuff was free, and the light shone from the floor, spinning. With his thumb broken to free his hand, Detective Winters was laying there, examining the injury. We have to leave, I hissed in terror. I hunched down. You ruined my thumb! He snarled back. His eyes rolled and he actually fainted where he lay. I took up the flashlight and used it to bathe his body in light. There, I left him, and continued to escape the place he had brought me. Upon the kill, I stumbled, alone. There, the chalk outline remained. 2 children. Looked like they were dragged and discarded in a heap. The extension cords all went to one junction and split into the 3 lanterns that shone in that one room as day. I was in the heart of the labyrinth. I had escaped nothing. The handcuff hung freely, and I looked at its shiny surface. Reflected there in the polish of the cuffs, I could see the shape of one of the dark dwellers. It was on the wall and ceiling behind me, watching me from the darkness. I turned and it skittered into a crack in the wall with lightning quickness. Its many centipede legs making it look like the animation of a flipbook. Its length rippling in the darkness. I staggered back in mortal mystery. My eyes were wide and I choked on the breath I had exhaled, trying to scream in sheer terror. Then I closed my mouth on my tongue, knowing with reptile swiftness not to make a sound. For they were all around me. The ceilings and the corners of the floors, and the corridors filled with their monstrous shape. They were like spiders, or something I cannot even describe. Their movements in the darkness were so quick, it was as though they were one shape, and then the other, as they flailed and flung themselves at blinking speeds through the shadows. Without the light, I would be torn apart as the 2 victims that were taken before we arrived. I could not breathe, knowing I would die in the darkness. One of them put its dark spindly scythe of black chitin into the light for a split second, and I saw the urticating hairs bristling, ready to impale me with 1,000 needles just by touching me. I lifted what I thought was a rock to defend myself. I pulled it free from the edge of the corridor, from under some rags. As I held it up, I found a better grip, shifting my fingers into its grooves. The creatures scattered. I was breathing heavily, still gripped by terror. I had to escape back out of there, and I somehow took a step out of the light, back the way I had come. Or so I thought. I turned and turned again, feeling my way along with my left hand on the wall. My right hand held the object, which now felt light for a stone. My panic had subsided, and I had moved without thinking. I was lost in the darkness. I felt my way along. I kept thinking I could hear the creatures. Then, up ahead, I saw the light. In the middle of the light stood a policeman, gesturing for me. I stopped and watched. It came closer, the eyes horrible and empty of life. Then, as it escaped the light, I saw it was merely an illusion. Somehow, it could hide what it looked like, refusing to be seen in its entirety. The creature came for me, and then I screamed. It was a flash of scythe-like spider legs by the thousands, and its many horrible eyes and its beak-like mandibles. It was coming for me out of the darkness, a silhouette against the lanterns beyond. I was screaming and curling away from it, about to be torn to pieces by it. Resounding gun blasts flashed brightly and lit up its awfulness. The bullets tore into it, black ichor splashing where its flesh was. Then it fell over, twitching and curling and steaming. It quickly dissolved into a puddle of nightmares.
What in hell was that?
Detective Winters was shaking violently and still aiming his gun, even though he had emptied it. How should I know, Detective? This is your crime scene, I complained. I was shivering and sweating and knew there were more. There are more of those things.
My lord, are you alive?
Corey called into the hole.
It's your crow.
Detective Winters sighed in awe. I know that. How did he get out of your car? I wondered distractedly.
I left my window down, I think.
Detective Winters realized, his own mind easily choosing to think of something else. You think, or you know? I demanded, severely stressed. I accepted the flashlight and, trembling, he removed my handcuff without reason while I was holding the light. I tried to hand it back, and he gestured for me to wait a second by holding up one finger. He looked at my free hand without realizing what I was holding.
Jesus. I just think, okay? Sorry.
Detective Winters reloaded his weapon and grimaced. It looked very difficult with his ruined thumb.
My lord, are you alive?
Corey asked a second time. That is when we all heard them. I heard them, and Detective Winters heard them, and Corey heard them. Their voices froze my blood. The damned things were speaking. The penultimate horror I felt was a sweeping and cold knowledge of them. That they could speak and had their own language was fearsome in its perversion. Nothing like that should exist. And to give it intelligence was the work of a mad creator. Their language challenged man's place in creation, putting something so blasphemous in place of the will of man. Such a horror could break my mind with every syllable that they uttered with inhuman mouths. They did not only speak their chittering abomination, for some of them whispered plain English from the darkness as well.
This is the home. This is the darkness. It belongs rightly. All the food. The flesh is food. This belongs to the flesh, the food.
They spoke in a unified and horrifying whisper.
My lord, you should come out of there. The folk of the shaded places will kill you for trespassing. Then they will eat you.
Corey called to me from above. I got that! I shouted back, and the sound of my voice stirred the one nearest to us.
Time to go.
Detective Winters made me go first with the light. We made our move, and instantly it was as though the walls and ceilings had come alive. They were all around us, shifting rapidly, each taking the place of another to avoid the light and the gun. I shone it on them, and they fled the beam. Likewise, Detective Winters let them have a taste of his firearm, as he shot a bullet into each one that got too close. Breathing rapidly and wide-eyed, we emerged to find the rest of the policemen had already departed. Only Detective Winters' car and Corey remained. I had expected some sort of rescue, as though getting out would mean safety. I looked at the object I held. It was a skull. I turned back and stared into the darkness down there. Corey flitted to my shoulder and said into my ear,
They will come right on out of that hole and snatch you back in if you get too close.
"Thanks." I nodded, my mouth hanging open as I stood, in waves of terror. Part of my mind had not escaped. I needed to go back down there and get it real quick. It would only take 1 second.
Hang on.
Detective Winters curled over and threw up a bunch of thick, chunky bile onto a helpless banana slug. He reached down and used a leaf to flick it out of the vomit onto some nearby moss.
Sorry about that.
Must go now.
Corey advised in urgent repetition. I went and got in the car and watched with the horror hole with dreadful apprehension. I set the skull up front on the passenger seat. Then I tried to learn how to breathe normally again. I noticed that Detective Winters' driver's side window was actually down. Eventually, Detective Winters had managed to light the smoke he had kept behind his ear the entire time. It was sagging with sweat, and he took a few unhappy puffs before he flicked it down into the hole. I prayed none of the folk would come flailing out and entangle him, kicking and screaming into the dark.
We are lucky to be alive. If that really happened.
Detective Winters decided we both had merely freaked out in the dark down there as we drove away. He held up his dislocated thumb and added,
We couldn't die.
Death will always happen.
Corey objected. Detective Winters handed me his phone, and I put in the address. Then the GPS guided him to my old house as the sun went down. When we pulled up, she was waiting, her bags packed. She got into the car.
I'm coming with you.
Isidore told me and Detective Winters.
I won't stay here alone. Oh, Lord. I've just got to say it. I just have to tell you.
Well, not right now. Maybe later. I looked out the window, away from her. In my mind, I could still see the outline of those creatures, the horrible flash of their bodies. My heart pounded in anxiety, just thinking of them. I had always known of them, knew they existed. I had never, not even in my